On December 23rd, in the East Room of the White House, describing it as a Christmas gift to the American people, President Nixon signed the National Cancer Act of 1971.
We are here today for the purpose of signing the Cancer Act of 1971. And I hope that in the years ahead, that we may look back on this day and this action as being the most significant action taken during this administration.
Presidential involvement with cancer research had begun when President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed the National Cancer Act of 1937. In 1940, FDR drove to Bethesda, Maryland, to dedicate the National Institutes of Health, including, for the first time, a National Cancer Institute.
Among the buildings of the National Institute of Health to be dedicated here today stands the National Cancer Institute, created through provisions of the Act which I signed on August 5th, 1937.
Since its founding in 1913, the American Society for the Control of Cancer had tried to raise awareness of a disease so steeped in fear and stigma that it was rarely even named, much less spoken about in public. In 1938, philanthropists and activists Albert and Mary Lasker and their friend, pharmaceutical executive Elmer Bobst, took over the American Society for the Control of Cancer and rebranded it into the proactive American Cancer Society. Mary Lasker was a Democrat. She had been instrumental in President Johnson's funding of research and community health programs for heart disease, stroke, and cancer. Elmer Bobst was a Republican who had become one of the Nixon family's closest personal friends. Both Mary Lasker and Elmer Bobst would play vital parts in the National Cancer Act of 1971. When Richard Nixon became president in 1969, he had great hopes and plans for reforming the American healthcare system to assure that no American family would be prevented from obtaining basic medical care because they couldn't afford it. He had an early personal interest in cancer. His aunt, Elizabeth Milhouse Harrison, died of breast cancer when she was 38 and he was 17. Pat Nixon was 12 when her mother died of Bright's disease and a fast-acting liver cancer in 1924. As one of their earliest White House events, the new president and first lady welcomed American Cancer Society President Dr. Sidney Farber and cancer survivor and talk show host Virginia Graham to launch the Society's 1969 Crusade. A number of advances in research and treatment encouraged the idea that major cancer breakthroughs were possible. And in December, Mary Lasker sponsored striking full-page ads in the New York Times, Washington Post, and other national papers. After a year of planning, in his January 1971 State of the Union address, the president made a bold challenge and a firm commitment.
I will also ask for an appropriation of an extra $100 million to launch an intensive campaign to find a cure for cancer, and I will ask later for whatever additional funds can effectively be used. The time has come in America when the same kind of concentrated effort that split the atom and took man to the moon should be turned toward conquering this dread disease.
A month later, he met with his science advisor, Dr. Edward David, and his Science Advisory Committee. He made it clear that he saw a cure for cancer as an inspirational goal that would capture public attention, while the real work would be done by supporting research.
As far as the country needs the symbolism of the goal, I mean, so it was when he told that they had a whole book in this field. I think we have to look at it in two ways. One, which is, of course, find a cure or treatment for cancer. And second, the broader purpose of attracting public attention and developing public support for major efforts in medical research and support of those efforts in a very substantial way.
A few months later, he met with Dr. Charles Hoffman, president of the American Medical Association. Dr. Hoffman's granddaughter reads his account of that meeting.
President Nixon asked him, "Doctor, what do you consider the most pressing problem that medicine has today?" My grandfather later wrote, "My answer was simple: cancer." President said, "I'm amazed. Why do you think that?" And my grandfather replied, "I think that every physician who is dedicated and sincere never goes on the floor of a hospital where he has cancer patients without feeling helpless. We always come away with the feeling that there's so little we can do."
Some notes the president made at this time, July 1971, show his thinking and his determination to be directly involved. "We have made great progress in research. The time has come for a consolidated, massive effort to find a cure for cancer. I have asked for $100 million in additional funds. I have set up a new independent agency reporting directly to the president." In October, President Nixon announced that Fort Detrick in Frederick, Maryland, would be converted from a biological warfare facility to a cancer research center. The White House Domestic Council staffer working on the cancer initiative was Jim Kavanaugh. Today, Dr. Kavanaugh is chairman of the Nixon Foundation's board of directors.
In early 1971, after consultation with experts inside and outside the government, the president had decided that he would seek an additional $100 million for cancer research. He announced that decision in his State of the Union message that year, and the next day legislation was sent to the Congress to enact the president's program. Hearings were held in both the House and the Senate. It was a tight year for money that year, and in addition, both houses, the Senate and the House, were in control of the party opposite from the president's. But he was persistent, and both houses had hearings, passed bills. The House bill, much more in conformance to the president's program than the Senate. The president communicated to the Senate that there were provisions in their bill that he could accept, that there were provisions in their bill that he could not accept, but he offered modifications to make them acceptable. The House and Senate conferees went back to work to modify the bill, passed it in both houses, sent it to the president for his review in late November of 1971. And then on December 23rd at the White House, at a ceremony attended by leaders from the House and Senate, various national organizations, the American Cancer Society, university experts in the field of cancer, and others, the president signed the National Cancer Act of 1971.
Both houses of Congress had Democratic majorities, and the White House Congressional Relations staff worked tirelessly with leaders like Representatives Paul Rogers and Anker Nelson, and Senators Ralph Yarborough, Edward Kennedy, and Jacob Javits.
The passage of the National Cancer Act of 1971 could serve today as a model of bipartisanship. But that's not to say there were not significant differences, not only between Republicans and Democrats, but between the House and the Senate. President Nixon's leadership was crucial in resolving not only these issues, but in stressing the importance of the National Cancer Act, which over 50 years has fostered a revolution in biology and is one of the most transformational pieces of legislation of the 20th century.
On December 23rd, when the president signed the National Cancer Act of 1971, he invited the large bipartisan congressional delegation to join him for an historic photograph.
This is an indication of the priorities. You know, the Congress had a very long session and finally got adjourned. We all appreciated that fact, incidentally. But once they adjourned, they did too. Once they adjourned and they were to go home and go on their vacations, to have this many members of the House and Senate who are members of the committee back here shows how deeply they feel. And I think that for that reason, we'd like to record this for a picture. So go ahead. We don't have to tell House and Senate members how to get in the picture.
Although the phrase war on cancer was widely used, President Nixon himself purposely never wrote or spoke those words.
We would not want to raise false hopes by simply the signing of an act. But we can say this, that for those who have cancer, and who are looking for success in this field, they at least can have the assurance that everything that can be done by government, everything that can be done by voluntary agencies in this great, powerful, rich country now will be done. And that will give some hope, and we hope those hopes will not be disappointed.
In 1973, he requested a further $100 million, and in 1974, $100 million more. During his administration, more than $1.5 billion went to cancer research, helping to hasten the advances in molecular biology and immunotherapy and so many other areas.
Every day I see how research has changed and is constantly changing the treatments and the lives of young patients, which include the children that I work with in radiation proton therapy at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. With each research advancement, it brings new hope and comfort to patients and families. It makes me proud and inspires me to think about the difference that my grandfather has made, and about the living legacy he created 50 years ago on that December afternoon when he signed the National Cancer Act of 1971.
The National Cancer Act of 1971 established the independence of the National Cancer Institute and the tradition of direct presidential involvement. It focused a national conversation on cancer prevention. It created the National Clinical Trials Network. It created 15 designated cancer centers. Today, there are 71 nationwide, and that number continues to grow. In NCI's words, the National Cancer Act of 1971 gave our country an holistic approach to addressing cancer and its many challenges. This broad legislation gave new authority to the National Cancer Institute and established some of the programs that formed the backbone of today's cancer research enterprise. Most importantly, as a result of the National Cancer Act of 1971, lives were saved, lives were prolonged, pain and suffering were alleviated, and suddenly there was hope where there had been no hope before.
How would you like to be remembered?
I suppose everyone would like to be remembered particularly for his major achievements. But as I look back during the White House years, I think, for example, of an initiative which many people have forgotten, the Cancer Initiative. You remember we started that in 1971, and it was brought home to me just a couple of days ago. My brother, Don, has cancer. It's a very serious case. He's now taking radiation and chemotherapy. 10 years ago, his doctor told him he would be dead. So that initiative may have helped prolong his life and the life of other cancer patients. What I'm suggesting here is that we all think of, well, he went to China. He ended the war in Vietnam. He opened relations with the Soviet Union through détente. But in my view, if the Cancer Initiative, which we began, could save lives, that'd be worth all the rest put together.